turns out that the workforce are employed through an agency rather than directly by Amazon. If there are bad practices, that doesn't excuse it. And indeed, the practice is much more widespread than we've perhaps thought. What we need to pin down is exactly what those workers are, what their conditions are. I suspect that some of them are on what are called exclusive contracts, that they have to work for one company on a 0 hours basis. In other words, they don't get paid unless they get any work. But on the other hand, they may be not allowed to work for other companies. If that happens, then there is something wrong and we need to intervene to stop it. But we're not yet clear, on the basis of the evidence we have, how widespread that practice is.
But in the case of Amazon, even if it's shown they do use, obviously, agencies, that they're using them to hide behind the agencies. I mean, Amazon should be responsible for its employees. Just because it's using an agency doesn't mean that it can use and abuse employees in the way that employees have told us they feel like they're being abused.
Well, Amazon have got a bad name at the moment for all kind of other reasons connected with tax, but I mean, I think it's more important to focus on the generality of practices in the workplace. Many employers, not just Amazon, use employment agencies. And we need to be very clear on the conditions under which those employment agencies operate. As I said, there are cases where 0 hours contracts can work to the benefit of the workforce, where they want flexible working, which suits people with family responsibilities, studying, and so on. In other cases, it can lead to forms of exploitation, and we need to be very clear what the distinction is and how we deal with that distinction, whether we deal it through just making more information available, because people are often not clear what their rights are. It may involve legislative action.
In the case of Amazon, where employees tell us that they're not told that they're on 0 hours, they're told that they're working 4 days a week, 10-hour shifts, they think they're on full-time contracts. In fact, many of them leave other jobs to go to Amazon because they believed it would be better for them. But then they can go in at 7 a.m. and be sent home at 8 a.m. They can go in one day and be told they're not needed the next. That's not fair, is it? That's abusing staff.
Well, we don't know all the details of that particular case, and it seems in that particular case the problem is lack of information, lack of clarity, lack of transparency, workers not being told the conditions under which they're operating, and we need to make sure that people are aware what their rights are. As I suspect in those particular cases they could enforce their rights against the company, but we need to be much clearer than we currently are.
And in that case, even though they're using an agency, the agency, we discovered through one of them talking to us, actually said that he was told not to tell these casual 0 hours workers about holiday entitlement, for example, that they were allowed. And that's a breach of current regulations, isn't it? It's an example of when 0 hours contracts go very wrong.
Well, I mean, what you seem to be saying is that the workers are entitled to holiday pay and they're not getting it. So it isn't a question of, in that case, making sure they have entitlements. It's making sure that they realise they have them and that they can enforce them. And that's really a matter for them as individuals or their trade union to make sure it happens, and we in government to make sure that there's as much transparency as possible.
But if you do an investigation and you realise at Amazon that they are abusing these types of contracts and staff should be given more notice and more rights, will you hold them to book on it? Will you do something?
Well, as I said, I'm not targeting particular companies. Amazon have separate issues with the tax authorities. I'm not targeting them in particular. But I think all companies need to operate on a level playing field. That is what's fundamentally right. It's clear that for a long time we've had companies, not just companies, but charities and the public sector use 0 hours contract. Many of them use it perfectly responsibly. Their workload fluctuates. They make it very clear to the people who are working with them that they're on a casual employment basis. It suits the workers, it suits the company. So in many cases it works perfectly well. But there are cases of abuse, and the abuse could be around exclusive contracts, it could be around concealing information, and those abuses will need to be dealt with.